What's up, YouTube? Pastor Bob here. So, I've I had so many people worried in all my life about a nuclear war. Well, there is so much fear mongering out there on the social media and all these television broadcasters. They should be ashamed of themselves. This can lead to a lot of other things. People can have a heart attack from seeing that stuff, hearing about that stuff. It can cause multiple health issues. Well, let me enlighten you about a little bit of what can happen. Firstly, any kind of nuclear device has to have a launching system. Those launching systems take electricity. Tracking systems work off of electricity. They are communicated, and their destination points are all locked in by internal electrical components. If an EMP blast was to blast wherever those rockets are, whether they're launched or they're not launched, what it does is it disables all those tracking devices. And what happens is it shuts those down. Wherever they may be, those nukes, it'll shut them down. It's not like, let me give you for instance. You have an electrical and non-electrical blasting systems in the military when you're an engineer and you're doing demolitions. If you're running a ring main or a line main, every system has a dual ignition system, and it has to be electrical and non-electrical. They call it a fail-safe. These fail-safes are put into place generally as a backup. When it comes to a nuke or any kind of a guided system, they're run off internally. It's locked in by a couple of things. One, satellite, right? So there's electricity going on there, signals, correct? So when you knock out the electrical components of anything that is guided, it ain't going to know where to go no more, and it's going to shut it down. The only thing that will keep it going is fuel. So it's just going to go to wherever it's going to go. But if it don't know where it's going anymore, it can't continue on a path because it don't know what path it's going on. So if something's going up in the air and you knock it out with EMP, it's just going to fall straight down. Wherever that straight down is. Wherever you gave that EMP blast. So a lot of people in the media don't tell you those things. They don't explain these things to you. They could come up with all kinds of horse shit to tell you to make you worry about a nuclear war. Listen, EMP is already there. It's been there for a long time. There are so many satellites and there are so many laser-guided systems that I wouldn't fear too much about nuclear blasts going off everywhere around the world. What I would be more worried about is an EMP blast. Not to be fearful of it, but an EMP blast can take everything off the grid in every nation. Don't worry about the nukes. Worry about an EMP blast. EMPs can put you back 25, 30, 40 years, depending on what kind of, what nation you are. It shuts all electricity down, right? It takes everything off the grid. Your telephones, your lights, it destroys components in your vehicles. So these are the things that you really need to think about. So while everybody's worried about a nuclear attack, well, an EMP can definitely put the nukes out. The only nukes that probably wouldn't have an issue unless somebody had multiple EMP blasts would be submarines. And there's only one country in the world that has the capability to do that, and that's the United States. And trust me, Russia knows that. China knows that. All the nations know that. So, instead of listening to all these fear-mongering people, unless that's what you're into, and you're into that kind of drama, don't worry about that stuff, guys. Now, a short distance from Russia to Ukraine nuclear blast. Well, they could EMP it, but the problem with that is the fallout is still going to be wherever it is if it blows up. Whether it even hits the mainlands or wherever. And here's the thing. When you do a nuke, the dispersion of radiation, is going to drift. And Russia itself could suffer from that. And other allied nations can suffer from that. And then you would have an onslaught. And if you think they're just going to pop nukes, they might not. They might pop EMPs. And that shuts them down. And what will happen? It will avoid the nuclear problem. And even if they went off, they'd just EMP them again. So, don't take your eyes off of second base just because somebody's running to first, right? Don't worry about them going from second to third. If you're not worried about him going from second to third, you got to be paying attention to the ball game, right? In other words, about somebody advancing to the next level. Just something for you guys to think about. You got to think about the whole story. You got to think about fear mongering. One thing about Putin himself or the Russian people, and I'm not going to say all Russian people, but Russian people with military concepts. Here's the thing. They rule by strength, right? Whether they're really going to do it or they're just bullshitting you with propaganda. All in all, that's how they rule their nation. That's the way they choose to rule their nation. Okay? Whether people have a good reason to do what they're doing or a bad reason, look, when a wild animal gets backed into a corner and it feels threatened, it's going to come out exactly like Putin's doing. The only problem is, and the difference is when you have a force like his and they don't want to go to war and they don't want to die. They're not willing to really die for their nation. Or when they're lied to. And the worst thing that can ever happen is when a nation itself turns on you. There's a big difference between a big democracy like we have in America, of the United States, as to a country like Russia. So, if you guys are really wondering what's going on, think about all the facts, all the things that can happen, with what's going on in the world today. Lasers, look, if you think we don't have them, we do. We've got lasers. We've got EMP bombs. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there, guy. You know, the problem is, one guy sticks his chest out, another guy sticks his chest out, another guy sticks his chest out. It just gets crazy. Do I think it's a possibility that Putin could use a nerve agent or some kind of a chemical agent? Very possible. They've done it in the past. Is that a safer thing? Not really. They have to be careful with that and the amount of dosage that they do with that. Because depending on what the wind is doing and the weather, it could float right back into Russia and start killing their own people. So unless, the leader of a country isn't worried about, the casualties of war in their own nation, it's very unlikely that they're going to disperse chemical agents. There's rules. And if them float, something like that floats into another country, you know, just like a nuke, and a radiac meter, a Geiger counter, you know, shows an emittance of, high levels of radiation, that's just another reason for NATO to kick into gear. And trust me, Putin really doesn't want that. And his generals don't want that. So think about everything before you stop worrying. Know and gather all the facts. Just don't base everything off of, what the media tells you. All them fear-mongering people who just want numbers, and that's how they make their money. Okay? Don't listen to all that crap. Because I'd hate to see you guys get sick, get stressed out, God forbid your health goes bad because you're being all stressed out because of all of this crap going on in the world. My grandfather used to tell me, shit or get off the pot. A man who talks about something too much generally is not going to do it. A man who wants to fight somebody is not going to walk up to him and just say, we want to fight. If he's really pissed off at that person, he's just going to walk up to him and punch him in the face. Less talk, more action. When you go to war, you're not there to, play games. You watch the Navy SEALs, the Army Rangers, Special Forces, Force Recon, whoever it may be, they're not telling you what they're going to do. They're just going to go do it. All of this talk is just getting way out of hand. And, a lot of people contact me and a lot of people talk to me and ask me what my viewpoint in this is on all of this. Look, I served during the Cold War. I served during Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I know from my point of view and my position during those periods of time in my life what transpires. So, don't put yourself through this, guys. Okay? Look at all the facts. Do your research. Don't believe everything that you see and hear on TV. If he's going to do it, he's going to do it. And he ain't going to tell you about it. He ain't going to warn you. He's just going to do it. I mean, it's public knowledge about when each country would enact the use of nuclear warfare. And that time isn't here. And pretty much it's when you start to invade a country, and I believe that's how Russia's is set up. In a simplistic way of explaining it to you, it's if he was to invade his country and he had no other means to defend himself, and that's what he needed to do. So if the whole world was going against Russia, then, Russia to defend themselves, that's the last resort. So, Think about all the stuff that I'm saying, you know? And if you don't agree with me, hey, that's fine. But make sure you know all the facts before you don't agree with me. And don't waste your whole time every day worrying about that stuff. Trust me. We're not the people of the past. We're better than this. We're stronger, we're smarter, and we have better technology today. There's other means of people getting at you. And generally, it has to do with your pocketbook. So I'd be worried more about cyber warfare, and I'd be worried more about, money, how they can control and shift the boards with money. That's what I'd be more worried about. I told everybody over a year ago that this was going to happen. I said, you watch, after pandemic, there'll be a war and people will start crap. And it's sad that I knew that, but you can see it in people. You got to see what's going on. It's not just Russia, poking at their neighbor over there, right? Ukraine. Russia's been poking around in the Japanese islands too. Russia's been poking here, there, I mean, they're no saints, and neither is America. America ain't no saints either. But we have different reasons for doing what we do. And, it's just stupid. Like a bunch of kids not getting their own way. There's no need for any of this. The problem is Putin doesn't see Ukraine as a sovereign nation. And Putin feels like he's being backed in the corner. Well, it's backfiring how he went about it. He should have did it in a different way, But he's still living in his mind in the Cold Era, right? In the Cold War era. He ain't grown up. He hasn't learned anything from the past. As smart of a man as he is, he hasn't thought it all the way through. And it's sad. It really is. It's sad that all those women and children and innocent people have to die. And he has no remorse for that, but he goes to church on Sunday and calls himself a Christian. Or whatever he calls himself. So, the best thing that can happen here is, his generals decide, hey, we've had enough. And they just take care of business. No different than the United States. They could do the same thing. The generals in the United States could say, hey, we've had enough of Congress. Because you think them guys in Congress are going to go up against them generals who are in charge of, 200,000 or 300,000 men that are well trained? Something to always think about, guys. Know the facts and look at the big picture. Not just what some fear-mongering person on YouTube or whatever channel is feeding you for crap. So I just wanted to give a little of my insight in how I feel. I know that you all ain't going to agree with me. And some of you are. Because most of the people who, come to my channel, they understand that, I'm a pretty level-headed guy. I do many things and I love to learn. I love history. But one thing I don't agree with is that fear-mongering crap. It's absurd. So, with that, I love you all. Take care. Hope you have a good week. Like, share, subscribe. I'm Pastor Bob, and I'm out of here. See ya.